Tyler Bennett stared out the rain-streaked window of the airport terminal, gripping the strap of his worn backpack. At 19, he had never imagined being alone in the world, not like this. The recent death of his parents had left him untethered, a vessel of grief adrift in a city that felt too bright, too loud, too empty. The idea of spending the next few weeks with his Uncle Victor, someone he knew only through occasional holiday visits, was both a relief and a source of anxiety. Victor Bennett had always been a larger-than-life figure in Tyler's memory, charming, quick-witted, and with an effortless charisma that made people lean in when he spoke. Yet, there was something about him that Tyler could never quite grasp, a flicker of unpredictability, a hint of mischief in the way he smiled. The thought made Tyler uneasy, but he reminded himself he had little choice. His uncle had insisted, almost insisted, that Tyler stay with him while Victor traveled for work. The drive to Victor's coastal home was filled with silence punctuated by the occasional flash of conversation. Tyler noticed the way Victor's eyes darted from the road to him every few minutes, a subtle reminder that he was under scrutiny even in the passenger seat. The house itself emerged from the mist like a monolith, tall, modern, and empty, perched on a cliff overlooking the churning sea below. It was beautiful, undeniably, but the vastness and silence amplified Tyler's sense of isolation. "You'll be fine here," Victor said, breaking the quiet with that effortless charm. "I have some friends coming by. They'll keep you company, make sure you're comfortable." He flashed a grin, then grabbed his suitcase. "I have to leave early tomorrow for a business trip." "Don't worry, everything is arranged." Tyler felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Friends? Who were these people? Victor hadn't elaborated, and Tyler's unease grew with each passing mile. By the time Victor left the next morning, the house seemed to swallow Tyler whole. The echo of the closing door reverberated like a warning. He tried to distract himself by exploring the house, but every corner, every polished surface, seemed to remind him how alone he really was. It wasn't long before Victor's friends arrived. Mason Carlyle was the first to enter, tall, confident, and with a grin that seemed practiced yet disarming. He extended a hand, which Tyler shook hesitantly. "Tyler, right? Uncle Victor's told me a lot about you," Mason said smoothly. There was a charm in his tone, but it carried an undertone Tyler couldn't place. Next was Liam Hawthorne, quieter than Mason but no less intense. His eyes lingered on Tyler in a way that made him self-conscious. Liam carried an air of thoughtfulness, almost introspection, and Tyler felt a flicker of curiosity mixed with apprehension. Finally, there was Ethan Wells, who seemed to hover on the edge of the group, watching silently but with a protective presence. There was something about him that suggested reliability, yet his expression never fully revealed his intentions. The day passed with polite conversation, punctuated by the subtle dynamics among the friends. Mason dominated the room with stories and jokes, drawing Tyler into laughter he hadn't felt in weeks. Liam listened more than he spoke, asking questions that felt personal, probing into Tyler's thoughts and fears. Ethan observed quietly, occasionally offering insights or advice that Tyler wasn't sure how to interpret. Tyler noticed small things that unsettled him, a glance that lingered too long, a touch that seemed accidental yet deliberate, the way Mason's laugh often carried an undertone of something unspoken. He found himself questioning whether his unease was paranoia or instinct. Despite the charm and friendliness, there was a tension beneath the surface, subtle but undeniable. As evening fell, the three friends suggested a walk along the cliffside path near the house. Tyler agreed reluctantly, feeling the sea breeze whip against his face, carrying the scent of salt and storm. Mason talked about his recent travels, Liam mentioned art projects he was working on, and Ethan spoke sparingly, letting his presence speak louder than words. Tyler tried to focus on their words, but the undercurrent of curiosity, the subtle games of attention and tension, kept him on edge. Returning to the house, Tyler found himself alone in the great living room, the fire casting flickering shadows across the polished floor. He sank into a chair, his mind racing. Victor had left him in capable hands, he reminded himself, but were they truly capable? Or was there something he was missing? The day's encounters replayed in his mind, the way Mason's gaze had held him too long, Liam's subtle questions probing deeper than casual conversation should, Ethan's silent evaluation that he could feel his heartbeat quicken as he realized that the house, though empty and luxurious, was not just a shelter. It was a stage, and he was uncertain of the roles everyone, including himself, was meant to play. Questions swirled in his mind. Why had Victor left him here? What had he been told about Tyler? And, most pressing of all, could he trust these men? As night fell, Tyler climbed the stairs to the guest bedroom, pulling the covers tightly around himself. He lay awake, listening to the wind howl along the cliffside and the distant crash of waves, and felt a mixture of fear, anticipation, and something else he didn't fully understand, a stirring curiosity about the men Victor had left him with. Somewhere deep down, Tyler sensed that his life was about to change, in ways he could not yet predict, and with that thought, exhaustion finally claimed him, though his mind remained restless, teetering on the edge of discovery, desire, and danger. The quiet house held secrets, and Tyler was alone in the eye of the storm. The morning light seeped through the tall windows, painting the living room in a muted gold. Tyler woke with a restless tension gnawing at him. The previous day's encounters with Mason, Liam, and Ethan replayed in his mind, each glance and word feeling heavier in retrospect. He hadn't realized how acutely he noticed their gestures, the slight shift in their posture, the way their attention seemed to pivot toward him at just the right, or wrong, moments. Mason appeared first, already moving through the kitchen with a casual ease that suggested he had lived here before. "Morning, sleepyhead," he said, flashing a grin that was both playful and unervingly deliberate. "Coffee? Or something stronger to wake up?" His voice carried a confidence that made Tyler's stomach tighten with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Tyler shook his head, muttering a polite refusal, but Mason didn't seem to mind. "Suit yourself. But trust me, you'll need your wits about you today." The words lingered longer than intended, leaving Tyler with a strange awareness of Mason's presence even after he left the room. Later, Liam approached Tyler in the study, carrying a sketch pad and a cup of tea. "I didn't hear you come down," he said softly, his eyes studying Tyler with an intensity that made the younger man uncomfortable. "Do you like it here? The house, the view?" His tone was gentle, but Tyler could sense something probing beneath it, an attempt to gauge his reaction, perhaps even his vulnerabilities. It's fine," Tyler replied, unsure of how much to reveal. He wanted to seem composed, but the truth was a mixture of awe and anxiety. "It's big and quiet. Too quiet, maybe." Liam's lips curved slightly. "Quiet can be deceptive," he said. "Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's an invitation." Tyler shivered, uncertain if he should interpret the comment as a compliment or a subtle threat. By afternoon, the dynamics of the house began to reveal themselves more clearly. Mason seemed to take every opportunity to be near Tyler, casual touches lingering longer than necessary, a brush of the arm, a hand on the shoulder. Each time it happened, Tyler felt a confusing swirl of emotions, excitement, unease, and an inexplicable attraction he wasn't ready to name. Meanwhile, Liam's quiet attentiveness contrasted sharply with Mason's boldness. He asked questions about Tyler's past, his dreams, his fears, in a way that felt intimate and dangerously compelling. Tyler found himself answering more than he intended, sharing fragments of grief and longing that he hadn't voiced to anyone in months. Ethan remained distant, observing without interfering, but his silent scrutiny weighed on Tyler in a way that felt protective yet intimidating. There was a tension in the air that Tyler couldn't escape, the sense that these men, each in their own way, were assessing him, testing boundaries, and perhaps even waiting for him to make a misstep. The first night brought the subtle escalation Tyler hadn't anticipated. They gathered in the lounge for drinks, the firelight casting dancing shadows across the room. Mason leaned close under the pretense of sharing a story, his warm breath brushing Tyler's ear. Liam offered a quiet smile from across the room, as if acknowledging some private understanding only he and Tyler shared. Ethan poured a drink for Tyler, his fingers brushing against Tyler's hand, grounding him in a moment that was both comforting and unnerving. Tyler felt emotions collide inside him, confusion, desire, and a deep-seated fear. He wanted to trust them, to let the isolation of the past weeks ease, but every instinct screamed caution. He was aware, almost painfully so, that Victor had left him in their care for reasons he didn't fully understand. Were they friends, as Victor suggested? Or something more calculating? The days blurred into a tense rhythm. Mornings began with Mason's teasing comments, afternoons with Liam's probing questions, evenings with Ethan's quiet watchfulness. Tyler's heart became a battleground of loyalty, curiosity, and suppressed longing. He found himself drawn to Mason's bold charm, yet captivated by Liam's thoughtful gaze, while secretly yearning for Ethan's steadiness. One evening, Mason suggested a walk along the cliffside trail. Tyler hesitated, wary of the isolation, but the pull of curiosity was stronger. The three of them moved along the winding path, the waves crashing far below. Mason's arm brushed against Tyler's occasionally, casual but deliberate, and Tyler's pulse quickened with every touch. Liam walked slightly behind, watching the two with a subtle intensity that made Tyler feel exposed and observed. Ethan stayed near the rear, silent, his presence anchoring Tyler even as it reminded him of the fragility of trust. Halfway through the walk, Mason paused at a bend overlooking the sea. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, voice low. The wind tugged at his hair, making him appear almost ethereal. Tyler nodded, unable to look away from the way Mason's features were highlighted by the fading sun. For a moment, the world contracted to just the two of them, the crashing waves below amplifying the tension between curiosity and restraint. "I've never met anyone like you, Tyler," Mason added, leaning just close enough that Tyler could feel the warmth of his presence. The word struck Tyler unexpectedly, sparking emotions he hadn't anticipated: desire, confusion, and a dangerous thrill. He wanted to respond, but his voice caught in his throat. Liam stepped forward, his hand brushing against Tyler's shoulder with deliberate gentleness. "We care about you, you know," he said softly, his eyes locking with Tyler's. "All of us, in different ways. But you need to understand, this isn't simple." The words hung in the air, ambiguous, a warning wrapped in intimacy. Ethan, who had remained quiet the entire time, finally spoke, his voice steady and calm. "You're vulnerable right now, Tyler. Everyone here has intentions, but not all of them are the same. Be careful where you place your trust." His words were measured, almost paternal, yet tinged with something unspoken, an acknowledgement that Tyler's life was teetering on the edge of choices that could change everything. Returning to the house, Tyler felt a swirl of conflicting emotions. He was drawn to them, yet cautious, intrigued, yet fearful. The house that had once felt empty now seemed alive with subtle games, glances, and intentions he could not fully decipher. Each friend held a piece of the truth, but none revealed the whole picture. As he climbed the stairs to his room that night, Tyler realized that the isolation that had initially frightened him now had a new shape. It was a landscape of temptation and uncertainty, where desire and danger walked side by side. The fire of curiosity burned inside him, and he knew that the days ahead would test not only his emotions but the very boundaries of trust, loyalty, and self-discovery. And with that thought, Tyler sank onto the bed, the soft hum of the night outside blending with the storm of feelings inside. The house was no longer just a home, it was a crucible, and he was at the center of it. Tyler awoke to a low fog curling around the cliffs, the distant crash of waves a constant reminder of the isolation he now felt acutely. The days with Mason, Liam, and Ethan had blurred into a series of small, intoxicating tensions and ambiguous gestures. What had begun as curiosity had grown into something far more complicated: desire, suspicion, and a gnawing awareness that trust in this house was a currency he couldn't afford to spend lightly. It started with small betrayals. Mason, whose charm had seemed harmless, had begun crossing boundaries Tyler hadn't realized existed until it was too late. A lingering touch in the kitchen, a whisper in the hall, moments that felt accidental but carried the weight of intent. Tyler had resisted, sometimes, but the thrill of attention gnawed at him, making his own heart a confusing mix of fear and longing. Meanwhile, Liam's quiet attentiveness had taken on a sharper edge. Tyler had begun to suspect that Liam's probing questions were not merely for connection but for information about him, about his vulnerabilities, and perhaps even about Victor. Liam's gaze lingered in ways that Tyler couldn't ignore, and the quiet pressure of being watched became almost unbearable. He wanted to flee, yet the thought of leaving the house or confronting the friends felt impossible. Ethan, who had remained a steady presence throughout, suddenly became the anchor Tyler hadn't realized he needed. The protective manner in which Ethan spoke to Tyler, the subtle but unmistakable way he seemed to notice everything, grounded Tyler in moments of chaos. But even Ethan's intentions were unclear. Was his concern genuine, or was it another layer of manipulation? Tyler couldn't tell. The turning point came one evening when Mason cornered Tyler in the library. The dim light cast long shadows, and the silence was thick with tension. "Tyler," Mason began, his voice low, "you can't pretend you don't feel it." The words were simple, yet the weight behind them was undeniable. Tyler's pulse quickened, a mixture of fear and desire twisting in his chest. "I don't know what you mean," Tyler murmured, though his voice trembled. "You do," Mason replied, stepping closer. The heat from his presence was disorienting, and Tyler felt the pull of temptation as if it were a physical force. Yet, before anything could happen, Liam appeared at the doorway, his expression unreadable but his eyes sharp. "Enough," he said quietly, yet with authority that silenced the room. Tyler felt a wave of relief, followed immediately by confusion. The dynamics were shifting, and he didn't know where he stood anymore. That night, Tyler lay in bed replaying the day's events. Mason's boldness, Liam's quiet manipulation, Ethan's protective distance, all of it collided into a swirl of emotions. He realized he could no longer ignore the truth. The house was a crucible, testing not only his feelings but his understanding of loyalty, trust, and desire. The next morning brought the confrontation Tyler had dreaded but sensed was inevitable. Mason had taken him aside under the guise of an apology, explaining that his actions had been impulsive, driven by attraction he hadn't anticipated. "I didn't mean to pressure you," Mason said, sincerity mingled with frustration. I can't pretend anymore." Tyler felt the conflict inside him intensify. He wanted to believe Mason, wanted to surrender to the attraction, yet a part of him recoiled, knowing that the allure was intertwined with manipulation. Liam approached separately, more calculated in his approach. "I never wanted to hurt you, Tyler," he said, voice measured. "But sometimes honesty isn't simple. What you feel here, it's real, but so is the danger. You have to decide where your loyalty lies, me, them, or yourself." Tyler felt a chill. Liam was right, the decisions he made now would shape not only his relationships but his sense of self. Ethan's intervention came later that evening. "Tyler," he said gently, placing a steady hand on his shoulder, "you don't have to figure everything out at once. But recognize this, some people act out of desire, some out of care, and some out of self-interest. Know the difference before you act, because once you do, there's no going back." Ethan's words resonated, a blend of guidance and warning that Tyler could not ignore. The climax of tension came unexpectedly that night. Tyler discovered a note tucked under his pillow, written in Mason's handwriting, "Meet me in the study. Alone." His pulse raced, torn between curiosity and the lessons of the past days. He hesitated, glancing at Liam's quiet presence in the hallway and Ethan's silhouette in the doorway. Every instinct told him to run, yet he moved toward the study, heart hammering. Inside, Mason stood near the fire, shadows dancing across his face. He didn't reach for Tyler, didn't speak immediately. He simply watched, and the unspoken message was clear: Tyler had a choice. The tension was almost unbearable. Tyler understood, in that moment, that the house had revealed its purpose, not merely a home, but a test of desire, loyalty, and self-awareness. Tyler took a deep breath, steadying himself. I can't be manipulated," he said firmly, his voice stronger than he expected. Mason's shoulders slumped slightly, a flicker of disappointment passing across his expression, but also, strangely, respect. "I understand," Mason said quietly, stepping back. "But know this, I meant nothing but honesty. I'll leave you to decide what that means for you." Later, as Tyler returned to his room, Liam approached one last time. "The choice is yours," he said softly. "Trust yourself first. That's all anyone can ask." Ethan stayed behind silently, offering nothing but a steady presence, the kind of reassurance that didn't demand repayment or confession. Tyler finally realized that amidst all the tension and temptation, his agency, the ability to make choices for himself, was what mattered most. By dawn, Tyler had emerged transformed. He wasn't sure he fully understood the motivations of Mason, Liam, or Ethan. Perhaps he never would. But he understood something more important: desire could be dangerous, affection could be complicated, and boundaries were a responsibility he could no longer ignore. Victor returned a week later, expecting a naive and compliant nephew. Instead, he found Tyler confident, measured, and self-aware. The house, the friends, the tension, all had shaped him in ways that left an indelible mark. Tyler's gaze met Victor's with quiet strength, a subtle message that the weeks alone had been a crucible, and he had emerged tempered, capable, and aware. The house remained quiet, yet Tyler knew its walls would always echo with lessons learned, desires confronted, and boundaries respected. He had survived the test, not unscathed, but wiser, and for the first time in months, he felt a cautious sense of peace.